My name is Tina Blas. I'm a mother and a chef. I love to cook for myself, and I used to love to cook for other people, but that's kind of changed with parenting. Yeah, because I went from traditionally like French trained culinary school, and then like all this happened, and I got interested after watching some documentary about eating for health. So now it's just like I make myself little meals. So yeah. Well, this is a dish that I had to like really think about because I don't have like this signature dish. And I even like asked my partner, like, what is this dish? And he's like, I'm not sure. But then I thought about it, and I recently started talking with my mom about food. And there was one dish that she made when we were little, and that I always remembered, and it was it's called adobo. And it's a Filipino dish, and I'm like a quarter Filipino, and just so interesting because like my mom's not Filipino, but my dad is, but she like found the recipe. And then that also makes me think like, why didn't he find the recipe? And why it would have been nice if he like maybe cooked sometimes. I think it was a dish that maybe she had had when they went to eat, at one of their houses or some like, I don't know, celebration or gathering. And maybe my dad mentioned like, oh, I really like this. And she's like, oh, I'll figure out how to make it. But it was, again, one of those things where she didn't have the exact recipe to show me or share or send. So she came and cooked it for me. I guess it would remind me of like when I was younger, when I lived with my parents, when I was like a kid. And it reminds me of just like my mom, actually, which is funny. Then recently when I'm like, oh, I should make this dish or I'm going to try, then I shared it with my family, which I have just a partner and one son. And they both really liked it. So I'm like, maybe I should like try to like incorporate this as part of like sharing culture, right? Because I feel like it gets lost sometimes, just like with me just making dishes that I see online or like recipe books that aren't really connected. It's just me finding those and being interested. So it's kind of like, oh, at least it's something I could share culturally with my family. Because my mom did most of or all of the cooking and didn't share a lot of recipes, I'm finding now that I'm like, wait a second, I want to know this stuff. And so I've been trying to ask her more about certain things, but she also just like, I just made this from watching my mom or grandma, and I just kind of did it how they sort of did it. And so there's nothing really written down. So I've been like maybe trying to write these things down. I think because I did do a lot of studying as far as like nutrition, I think in the beginning I was trying to like change it or find like a low sodium like soy sauce or this or that. And like, yeah, I'll definitely use those things because I have them at home. So I think those are the things, like maybe just the ingredients that are less sodium or maybe less fatty, although I love the fat and that's where the flavor is. I think a lot of times my mom would use like skin on meats and bone in, right? And that's where like a lot of the flavor is. And you learn that in culinary schools. And so sometimes I'll just cook them with skin on and bones, and then I'll just take the skin out and like the flavor will be there and it's tasty. So I guess because it's such a simple dish, there's not a lot to change. I mean, now I serve it with like brown rice, but that's the only things I can think of. Yeah. Yeah, it was hard because I know I keep reiterating how like easy this dish is, and it's so easy. I think my brain always wants to make things a little bit not more complicated, but use what I've learned in culinary school, like the techniques. And sometimes those don't really translate to every culture, maybe. Or just like, I always see my mom, she would make it by literally boiling the chicken in like an inch of water first. And I'm like, that's not what I learned. That seems so strange. Why would you do that? But then, she adds all the other ingredients and she didn't really know. She was just following what they had showed her. And so I'm like, because for me, that just seems, I don't know, I would want to brown it. And I have seen recipes after I like looked it up. I'm like, you can brown the meat first, which makes a lot of sense. But then it just adds another step that might be unnecessary. And so if you want to make it quick and like easy for yourself, you can just do it the way that the way she showed me. which was, yeah, to like boil it, which was so strange, to in the inch of water. And then after X amount of time, I think it's like 10 minutes maybe, and then you just like add the rest of the ingredients and then keep boiling it and like stewing it, or like simmering actually. But yeah, so I was just confused. Like I even was just like questioning all of the steps that she was giving me, but I'm like, no, I need to just like, if I want it to potentially taste like how she made it, that I should follow these steps. So yeah, I had to like forget about what I learned and then just do it the way that she had shared. So there's maybe like the layering of like how they did it, which makes it taste the way that it does. Well, first of all, it's more of like a stew or stewed meat. So I think about it being as like almost like a confit. Like confit is usually cooked in its own like fat, but this is cooked with fat, but also with a lot of vinegar. So it's like cooks and like stews in itself and braised with a lot of vinegar. And I guess vinegar is really traditional to Filipino cooking, which I didn't really know. So yeah, and so if we want to talk about ingredients, I would say a lot of people make it with either pork or chicken and soy sauce. You could probably use any soy sauce. And then of course the vinegar, like I said. And then it's just garlic and like black peppercorns and like a bay leaf. And it basically just stews in itself for a very short amount of time. And the meat is very tender. Yeah. So it has like this vinegar, like tardiness, not necessarily sour. Most of the time it's eaten with like steamed rice, and we'd always have like a vegetable. So it'd probably be like a broccoli or something. Like it's very simple. I've seen it at a couple of restaurants. There are a few in the area, but yeah, it's very just like meat heavy, I feel, in that Filipino culture. But I don't really know anything more than that. Yeah. Yeah, and I think what I was like, because I tried to read about it, because I'm like, oh, maybe I can find out a little bit more information. And I guess the Philippines are like this tropical place. And so a lot of times they would use a lot of vinegar in their cooking to preserve certain things. And so that's why I guess it's prominent in their cooking. I'm not 100% sure, but I know the Philippines were colonized by Spain. And so I know that there are Spanish dishes called adobo, or use some sort of adobo like seasoning. I'm not 100% sure. So maybe that had some influence to it. But yeah, I didn't know that until I looked it up.